Alright dudes, today we are going to change fork springs. My stem takes 1/4 inch bolts for my riser, top clamp. So I'm going to take those loose, pull my bars off. I'm also going to take loose the windscreen, power vision and bracket. I'm going to take all that loose, that way I can get down and get to my fork caps. Alright, so with the power vision removed, my windscreen removed, top clamp removed off my risers, I can now take my 1 3/8" socket right there, 1 3/8", and get to my fork caps right here. Going to loosen up the pinch bolts right here. That way there's nothing that's binding the threads on the caps. The pinch bolts on my bike are a T45 Torx. You want to make sure that when you're removing your fork caps, you keep downward pressure because they will be under tension. For anyone who's never changed out fork springs, or I guess if you have springs or fluid, if you do smell this, it smells like a whale's butthole. Using this paper towel just as something so it doesn't spin my glove as I'm pushing down. Some more whale's butthole. So since I am changing out the springs, I am going to do a fluid change as well. Contents of the fork, which will be these 2 spacers. All these are the factory pre-cut spacers, just some thin wall tube. You may be asking, hey, why do you have a bunch of washers down in your forks? Well, if you take these washers and you grind them down around the edges to where they slide easily up here, you can make some makeshift preload adjusters. You do that when you're too cheap to buy forks or springs. That right there is the one factory washer that you should have in your forks. And below that, we have our spring. Not a very long spring at all. Go back through and do a little cleanup. What I am going to do is use a 1/4 inch hex head socket and a 1/2 inch wrench on the bolt or the nut on the back side of this. I'm going to remove my front fender. It's the same thing on this side. Caliper bolts are a 10 millimeter 16-point closed-in wrench. Before I loosen anything, the pinch bolt over here on the opposite side of the wheel, I'm going to take a 15/16 socket and break loose my axle nut, 5/16 hex head, and that's a 9/16 wrench. Loosen the lower pinch bolt. Well, would you look there? We got a box from Amazon. I sure as hell hope it isn't rocks or a brick. Progressive suspension. Progressive part number is 11-1552. Would you look? It's not rocks. Got 2 spacers, a couple of washers, install instructions, sticker, and 2 springs. So now in order to be able to drain the forks, there's a small screw right down here at the bottom. It's got a little copper washer. Number 1 rule, don't strip the head of the screw. Second rule, don't lose the copper washer. A little cup ready. Take that out. Catch all of my fluid. And you're going to make a mess, of course, because when you work on a Harley, you need to do that. So with the draining basically complete, I'm going to reinstall the screw. It doesn't have to be in there tight, just sort of got to lightly snug. So with that done and everything settled, looks like there's approximately 340 mils in one leg. Good coffee. As far as fork oil goes, there's a lot of different brands, a lot of different things that people recommend and that people use. I ended up just going by the dealership, buying some fork oil. It was labeled as fork oil type E. The Service Manual states that it should take less than 12. I think it's like 11.9 or something like that. Once I fill that back up to 340 mils, I can go back through and pour that back in the fork, remeasure it, and make sure that I am close to where it was when I started. So now that I have 340 mils back in the cup, I can go through and pour that back down into the fork. All right, gentle peoples. So I've drained the fork oil, taken the time to repolish my fork lowers or sliders. Now I'm going to take my Progressive heavy duty springs. I'm just going to slide those down in the tubes like so, taking care that when I put them down in there, I don't make the mistake of putting them in upside down. So the mistake I made on the first side was I did not pay attention to this part of the coil of the spring being wound tighter than this. You want to make sure that you put the springs back in the way that you took them out. This right here, the tighter wound part of the coil on mine went in first. Put those in. Next I'm going to install the provided washers. Progressive sent these two spacers. These spacers are 4.5 inches long. Per the, I guess, sort of calibration instructions, says I need to cut these down to 2 3/4 of an inch, or 2.75. So I've cut the spacers down to 2 3/4 of an inch. Drop those in. As you can tell, I've got roughly 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch sticking up, which is less than I had sticking up with my original setup. Putting the fork caps back on, it's basically the same process. You want to put the caps on, you are going to have to put downward pressure on the caps. In order to get them started. Snug the caps down about 30 foot-pounds, and the other side as well. Going back through and installing my windscreen and power vision. Get that loosely secure. Really need to replace those bolts because that looks horrible. Putting some dielectric grease on there. I'm going to reinstall my axle. Put on my washer and axle nut. Reinstall my pinch bolt and washers. Going to snug my axle nut to 60 foot-pounds. Snug my pinch bolt up. Going to reinstall the front caliper. Going to reinstall my front fender as well. So just with the weight of the bike, I'm going to measure the preload of the motorcycle itself. Static preload of itself looks to be about 3/8 of an inch. Rider preload looks to be about 13/16, or a little over 3/4 of an inch. With me on the bike, I am 5'11", 175, 1/2 inch of sag. I'm going to take it out, take it for a ride, and I'll let you guys know how it does. Just come back from a ride. I must say the HD springs from Progressive, definitely a lot better ride than
than I was expecting. If you buy a Sportster and you're a lighter person, then yeah, the front suspension may work for you. The rear suspension may work for you. My problem is that I'm a bigger guy and I don't want to buy a bigger bike. I really enjoy my bike, and the front suspension now feels a lot more stable. I'm not experiencing, or did not experience, any of the bottoming out that I have in the past. I don't think this is anywhere close to a stiff ride. If you have a lot of brake dive and are having bottoming out issues, definitely give Progressive Springs a shot. Thanks for watching. Ride safe.